You know what's worse than finding out your wife is cheating? Finding out she's been running the dating app that introduced you to her in the first place. I mean, think about it. Every message, every photo, every sweet word that made you fall in love. It was all just product testing. I was never her husband. I was her beta user, and I didn't even know I was part of the experiment until I accidentally logged into her laptop and saw my own profile listed under test accounts, high-value targets. That's when it hit me. 3 years of marriage, 2 years of dating before that, and I was just data points in her algorithm. She didn't just break my heart, she engineered it. If these confessions help you see the warning signs, please like this video and tell us in the comments what red flags you've learned to watch for. This story came to us from one of our longtime subscribers in Bangkok, who wanted other expats to know what can happen when digital romance meets Southeast Asian entrepreneurship. I'm sitting in our Bangkok apartment at 2 a.m., staring at Cool's laptop screen, and I can't breathe. There's my face, my actual dating profile photo from 5 years ago, listed under a folder called Beta Test Profiles, Successful Conversions. Next to it are screenshots of our first conversations, marked with notes like emotional vulnerability, excellent response rate, and financial stability confirmed. Proceed to phase 2. My hands are shaking as I scroll through what looks like a business presentation titled Western Male Psychology, Optimal Manipulation Strategies. This isn't just betrayal, this is something else entirely, something that makes my skin crawl. I hear Cool's key in the door downstairs, and I know my life is about to explode. The sound of her heels clicking on the marble floor echoes through our apartment like a countdown timer. I'm staring at evidence that my entire marriage was a case study, and she's about to walk in here humming the same tune she always hums when she thinks she's had a successful day at work. But now I know what kind of work she really does. Now, I know that every tender moment we've shared was probably logged in some database as successful emotional manipulation. The clicking stops at the bottom of the stairs, and I hear her setting down her purse. "Graham?" she calls up. "Are you awake?" Her voice sounds the same as always, warm, concerned, loving, but now it sounds like software to me. Programmed. Responses designed to make me feel cared for. "I'm up here," I manage to say, my voice cracking. I quickly take photos of the screen with my phone, though my hands are shaking so badly the first few shots are blurry. The evidence is right here in front of me, but part of me still can't believe it's real. This woman I've shared a bed with for 3 years, planned a future with, trusted with my retirement savings. She's been running a sophisticated emotional con game this entire time. And I wasn't just a victim. I was apparently her masterpiece. Let me back up to how this all started, because the beginning makes the ending so much worse. 5 years ago, I was sitting in my empty Sydney house, divorce papers signed, kids grown and gone, wondering what the hell to do with the rest of my life. My mate Benny kept sending me photos from Bangkok, cheap beer, warm weather, friendly people. "Come on, mate," he'd say over video calls. "Sydney's bleeding you dry. Your ex got the house anyway." Jenny had taken everything in the divorce, 25 years of marriage, and I walked away with my superannuation and a suitcase full of clothes that reminded me of everything I'd failed at. The house felt like a mausoleum, full of photos of family holidays and birthday parties with people who didn't want to see me anymore. My kids were polite when they called, but distant. They'd chosen sides, and it wasn't mine, so I took my telecommunications pension, sold the few things Jenny hadn't wanted, and booked a one-way ticket to Thailand. Benny met me at Suvarnabhumi Airport with a grin and a Leo beer. "Welcome to your new life, mate," he said. "Everything's cheaper here, and nobody gives a shit about your past." Within a week of landing, he dragged me to some expat bar in Sukhumvit and showed me this dating app called True Connect Thailand. Said it was designed specifically for Western men looking for serious relationships with Thai women. "None of that bar girl nonsense," he promised. "This is for real connections, educated women, business owners, teachers, women who want partners, not sponsors." I was skeptical, but after 3 months of loneliness in a country where I couldn't speak the language and didn't understand the culture, I was desperate enough to try anything. That's when I met Cool. Her profile was different from the others. No bikini photos, no obvious desperation. Just this beautiful woman in a business suit, standing in front of what looked like an office building, smiling genuinely at the camera. Her bio said she was 29, worked in tech, loved reading and cooking, and was looking for a mature man who values honesty and partnership. We matched instantly, which surprised me because most of the women on the app seemed to be looking for guys in their 30s and 40s, not a 52-year-old divorcee with grey hair and a beer belly. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours. She asked about my work in telecommunications, my kids, my dreams for life in Thailand. She shared stories about growing up in Bangkok, her struggles starting her own business, her hope to find someone who understood that success meant more than money. Every response felt thoughtful, personal, real. She'd type for several minutes before responding, and I imagined her carefully considering what to say, maybe even researching topics I'd mentioned so she could engage more meaningfully. After 2 weeks of messaging, she suggested we meet at a coffee shop near Lumpini Park. I know this might sound old-fashioned, she wrote, but I prefer to meet in daylight, somewhere public. Too many men on these apps just want one thing, and I want to make sure you're different. When I saw her walking toward me, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: hope. She was even more beautiful in person, but it wasn't just looks. The way she listened, asked follow-up questions about things I'd mentioned in our chats, remembered details about my children's names and ages. This wasn't some transactional meeting. This felt like destiny, like the universe was finally giving me a second chance at happiness. Our first date lasted 8 hours. We talked about everything: her tech startup dreams, my divorce, our families, our fears about starting over. She paid for her own coffee, insisted on splitting dinner, and when I offered to call her a taxi, she laughed and said she had her own car. "I'm not looking for a sponsor, Graham," she told me. "I'm looking for a partner." That line hit me like a punch to the gut, but in the best possible way. After 25 years with Jenny, who'd seen me as nothing more than a paycheck and a lawnmower, here was a woman who wanted me for me. Over the next few months, she introduced me to her sister, Ashara, took me to family dinners, showed me the small office space where she was supposedly building her app development business. Her family was warm and welcoming, speaking broken English with me and laughing at my terrible attempts at Thai. Her father, a retired government worker, grilled me about my intentions with his daughter, but seemed satisfied when I told him I was looking for a life partner, not a vacation fling. I met her parents, helped her move to a nicer apartment, even invested 200,000 baht in her startup when she said they needed capital for server costs. "I don't want to take your money," she'd said, tears in her eyes, "but this business means everything to me, and I trust you more than any bank." The way she'd hesitated before asking, the genuine reluctance in her voice, it made me want to help her even more. Everything felt organic, natural, right. She never pushed for money, never seemed desperate or calculating. When she finally agreed to move in with me after 6 months of dating, it felt like the mature, thoughtful progression of two adults who'd found each other. I proposed on our 2nd anniversary, and she cried real tears. Her family threw us a traditional Thai ceremony, and I felt like I'd finally figured out life. This was what happiness looked like: a smart, independent woman who chose me not for what I could give her, but for who I was. The first 2 years of marriage were genuinely good. Kul's business seemed to be growing. She'd disappear into her home office for hours, taking calls in rapid Thai, working on her laptop until late. I didn't mind. I was proud of her ambition, her independence. She never asked me for money beyond our shared household expenses, and she seemed to have her own income stream that kept her comfortable. We traveled together, explored Thailand, talked about maybe starting a family. She taught me basic Thai phrases, and I helped her improve her business English. At night, we'd lie in bed and she'd tell me about her day. Client meetings, app development challenges, the stress of running a small tech company in Bangkok's competitive market. "The hardest part," she'd say, "is understanding what people really want versus what they say they want. Especially Western clients, they're so different from Thai people in how they communicate their needs." I'd share stories from my telecommunications days, and we'd dream about expanding her business, maybe opening an office in Australia. She Seemed genuinely interested in my past, my expertise, my opinions on technology and business strategy. Sometimes she'd ask detailed questions about how Western men think, what they want in relationships, what makes them feel secure or insecure. "I'm trying to design apps that bring people together authentically," she'd explain, "but I need to understand the psychology behind why people make the choices they do in dating." I thought she was just trying to understand me better, to bridge our cultural differences. I was flattered that she cared enough to ask. Looking back now, I realized she was conducting market research, using our pillow talk as data collection for her real business. But at the time, it felt like intimacy, like the kind of deep connection I'd never had with Jenny. About 6 months ago, I started noticing things, small things that didn't quite add up. Kul would get phone calls at odd hours and step outside to take them, speaking in hushed Thai even though she knew I couldn't understand anyway. Her laptop was suddenly password protected, which it hadn't been before. She'd close it quickly if I walked into the room while she was working. When I asked about her business, her answers became vague: client confidentiality and trade secrets. One evening, I answered her phone while she was in the shower. The caller spoke English with an American accent. "Is Kul there? I need to discuss my dating profile optimization." I told him she'd call back, but when I mentioned it later, she said it must have been a wrong number. "Probably someone trying to sell dating services," she laughed. "You know how these scammers target expats." Another time, I was helping her carry equipment to her car and saw printed sheets in a folder, what looked like dating profiles with notes scribbled in the margins. When I asked about it, she said it was research for a client's social media management project. "Small businesses here need help with their online presence," she explained. "I'm helping a restaurant owner improve his Facebook dating profile so he can find a wife." These explanations made sense individually, but together they created this nagging feeling that something wasn't right. I started paying closer attention to her routine, her conversations, the way she'd quickly switch browser windows when I approached her computer. Was I being paranoid? Jenny had always accused me of being too trusting, too naive about people's motives. Maybe this was just the normal adjustment period of learning to trust someone from a different culture. But the feeling grew stronger every day. Something was off and I couldn't shake it. Last month, Kul's laptop wouldn't start, and she asked to borrow mine for an important client presentation. I was happy to help. Finally, a chance to support her business directly. She worked on it for hours while I was at my Thai language class. When I came home, she'd left it open on the dining table with a note saying she'd gone to the market and would be back soon. I wasn't snooping, just closing the laptop to clear the table for dinner, when I noticed something familiar in one of the open browser tabs. It was a profile management dashboard, and one of the profile photos looked like someone I recognized. I clicked on it, and there was Benny, my friend Benny, listed as user 4471, active premium member. His profile said he was 48. He's actually 52, worked in real estate, he's a retired mechanic, and was looking for a serious relationship. Below his photo were conversation logs with someone named Wasana, dozens of flirty messages that looked exactly like the style of conversations I'd had with Kul 5 years ago. The same questions about family, the same interest in his background, the same gradual building of emotional intimacy. "Tell me about your dreams for life in Thailand," Wasana had written to him. "I'm looking for a man who wants to build something real together, not just a holiday romance." Those were almost the exact words Kul had used with me. I clicked on another profile. Another guy I'd seen at the expat bar, then another. They were all there, Western men I knew personally, listed with their real information but optimized versions of their lives, matched with Thai women whose profiles all had the same subtle writing style, the same progression of emotional manipulation. My heart was pounding as I searched the system for my own name. That's when I found the folder that changed everything. The folder was labeled Graham Mitchell, Case Study, Successful Long-Term Conversion. Inside were screenshots of every conversation we'd ever had, starting from that first day on True Connect Thailand. But these weren't just archived chats. They were annotated like a research project. My messages were highlighted in different colors with notes like financial insecurity detected, emotional vulnerability confirmed, and Deployment of sympathy strategy successful. There were psychological profiles of me based on our conversations, predictions about my behavior, strategies for different phases of our relationship. Phase 1. Initial attraction and trust building. Phase 2. Emotional dependency creation. Phase 3. Financial integration. Phase 4. Legal commitment, marriage. Phase 5. Long-term extraction and data mining. Each phase had detailed notes about my responses, what worked, what didn't, adjustments made to the approach. Subject responds well to independence narrative, one note read. Avoid appearing financially needy. Emphasize career ambition and self-sufficiency. Another, subject has unresolved guilt about divorce. Leverage by positioning relationship as redemptive opportunity. But the worst part was seeing the bigger picture. This wasn't just about me. The system had profiles for hundreds of Western men, all categorized by income level, emotional vulnerability, relationship history, and manipulation resistance. Cool wasn't just running a dating app. She was running a sophisticated social engineering operation. The Thai women on the platform weren't random users. They were employees following scripts, trained to extract personal information, financial details, and emotional commitment from lonely Western expats. And I wasn't just a victim. I was apparently a success story. There were case studies based on our relationship, training materials for other operators, and even video recordings of some of our dates that had been used to train new staff on advanced emotional manipulation techniques. I realized that everything I thought I knew about our relationship was carefully orchestrated data collection. I was still staring at the screen when Cool came home with groceries. She walked into the dining room humming, saw me at her laptop, and froze. For maybe 10 seconds, we just looked at each other. Then she slowly set down the shopping bags and said, "You weren't supposed to see that." Not denial, not explanations, just acknowledgement that I'd discovered something I wasn't meant to know. The matter-of-fact way she said it hit me harder than any lie would have. This was just business to her. Getting caught was an operational risk she'd calculated and accepted. "How long?" I asked. "How long have you been running this?" She sat down across from me, looking suddenly tired. The mask was off now, and I could see something cold behind her eyes that I'd never noticed before. 3 years before we met, she said quietly. True Connect was my first successful app. We've facilitated over 2,000 relationships between Western men and Thai women. The way she said facilitated made my skin crawl, like she was running a charity instead of a con game. "Relationships, you mean scams?" She shook her head. "Not scams. Most of the relationships are real, Graham. The women provide genuine companionship, emotional support, even love. We just optimize the matching process." I stared at her. "You studied me like a lab rat. You recorded our dates." "For training purposes," she said, as if that made it better, "to help other couples have successful relationships." The clinical way she talked about it made me feel sick, like I was a product that had been tested and refined. "What about us? Was any of it real?" For the first time, her composure cracked. Her voice got smaller, younger. "It became real," she whispered. "It was supposed to be just another case study, but somewhere along the way I fell in love with you. That's why I couldn't extract maximum value. That's why I married you instead of just taking your money and moving on. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry." "You're telling me our marriage is proof that your scam worked too well?" Cool got up and poured herself a glass of wine. Her hands were shaking slightly. "You want to know the truth? The whole truth?" I nodded, not sure I was ready for it. She took a long sip and sat back down. True Connect has 3 tiers of operation. Tier 1 is legitimate. Real women looking for real relationships with Western men. About 30% of our users. Tier 2 is what? You found trained operators who develop genuine feelings for their targets but still follow the extraction protocols. Maybe 50% of our business. And then there's Tier 3. She took another sip of wine. Tier 3 is pure extraction. Professional emotional manipulators who can clean out a Western man's bank account in 6 months and disappear. These women never fall. In love, never feel guilty, never break protocol. They're specialists. I felt sick, the room was spinning. Which tier was I? You were supposed to be tier 2, she said. A mid-range target. Decent savings, emotional vulnerability, but not wealthy enough for tier 3. But when I started talking to you, something changed. You were different, kinder than most, more genuine. You actually listened when I told you about my family, remembered details about my life that weren't even in the script. She was crying now, but I couldn't tell if the tears were real or part of another performance. So I went off script. I started sharing real things about myself instead of the manufactured backstory. I introduced you to my actual family, not actors we usually use. I invested your money in a real business, not just stole it. I thought maybe I could make it legitimate. The room was spinning. So our entire relationship is built on a lie, but you're telling me it's a lie that turned into truth. I know how it sounds, she said. But yes, what we have now is real, even if how it started wasn't. I looked around our apartment, our photos on the walls, the life we'd built together, the plans we'd made. Everything felt contaminated now. How many other men are you doing this to right now? She was quiet for a long moment. Active cases, maybe 300? I didn't sleep that night. I lay in bed next to Kul, listening to her breathe, wondering if anything about her was real. Was the way she slept curled against my shoulder part of the performance? Were her morning coffee preferences genuine, or had they been calculated to seem endearing? Every little thing that had made me fall in love with her now seemed suspect. The way she'd laugh at my jokes, remember my stories, ask about my day. Was any of it authentic, or just well-executed customer service? At 5 a.m., I got up and started going through our shared documents. Bank statements, investment records, legal papers. I was looking for evidence of ongoing financial manipulation, but what I found was stranger. Our finances were completely separate and legitimate. She'd never asked me for large sums of money. The investment in her business had actually grown. She'd turned my 200,000 baht into nearly 500,000 through legitimate app development contracts. Her story about building a tech company was real. She just hadn't mentioned that the main product was an emotional manipulation platform. I found business registration documents, tax filings, employee contracts. This wasn't some fly-by-night scam operation. This was a sophisticated, legally registered business with multiple revenue streams and international clients. The dating app was just one branch of a larger social engineering consultancy. She was running the Southeast Asian equivalent of Cambridge, Analytica, but for matters of the heart instead of politics. When she woke up at 7, I was sitting in the kitchen with coffee and printed copies of everything I'd found. "We need to talk about what happens now," I told her. She nodded, looking resigned. "Are you going to the police?" I'd been thinking about that all night. I don't even know what crime to report. Emotional fraud? Running a business that manipulates people into relationships. Half the men you're targeting are probably happier than they've ever been. She sat down across from me. "So what do you want?" That was the question, wasn't it? What did I want? Justice? Revenge? To pretend none of this had happened? To go back to Sydney and forget Thailand existed? "I want you to shut it down," I said. "All of it. The dating app, the manipulation training, the emotional extraction business, everything." Kul stared at me. "That's my livelihood, Graham. It's not just me. I have 12 employees, contracts with clients across Asia. I can't just shut down a successful business because you don't like the ethics." "Then we're done," I said, and meant it. I can't be married to someone who makes their living destroying people's trust in love. She was quiet for a long time. I could see her calculating, running through options the same way she'd probably calculated how to manipulate me all those years ago. What if I transition the business, focus on legitimate matchmaking, relationship counseling, cultural integration services for expat couples, keep the technology and expertise, but change the purpose? I had to admit, it wasn't a terrible idea. What about the men who are currently being manipulated? We could gradually transition them to legitimate relationships or honest endings. No more emotional extraction, no more financial targeting, just normal dating app operations with Better psychological insights. It sounded too good to be true, but I could see she was serious. Why would you do that? Give up a profitable business model? Because losing you would hurt more than losing the money, she said. I know you don't trust me anymore, and I know I can't undo what I've done, but I can try to become someone worth trusting again. I looked at this woman I'd loved for 5 years, wondering if I was being manipulated even now. Was this conversation part of some advanced retention protocol? Was she just telling me what I needed to hear to prevent me from exposing her operation? How do I know this isn't just another layer of the scam? I asked. You don't, she said. Simply, you'll have to decide if you want to find out. That's where I am now, 3 weeks later. Cull has started the process of transitioning her business, brought me in as a consultant to help develop ethical standards for cross-cultural relationship technology. I'm learning things about online dating, human psychology, and the loneliness epidemic among Western expats that I never wanted to know. Some days I think I'm an idiot for staying. Other days I think I'm finally seeing the real Cull for the first time. Brilliant, flawed, capable of both manipulation and genuine love, trying to build something better from the wreckage of what we discovered. The hardest part isn't forgiving, Cull. It's forgiving myself for how good it felt to be chosen, even when I found out the choosing was calculated. I was lonely, vulnerable, and desperate for connection. She provided that, even if the method was engineered. Does it matter that the love became real if it started as a business transaction? I've been thinking about this for months now, and I still don't have an answer. What I do know is this. I'm 57 years old, living in a foreign country where I'm learning to navigate a relationship that defies every category I understand. We go to couples therapy now, with a counselor who specializes in cross-cultural relationships and, oddly enough, has experience with technology addiction and social media manipulation. Some weeks we make progress. Other weeks I want to pack my bags and fly back to Sydney. But I stay because, despite everything, what we have now feels more honest than anything I had in my 25-year marriage. Cull shows me her work now, asks for my input on ethical guidelines, includes me in business decisions. We're building something together, even if it's on a foundation that was initially rotten. The new version of her business actually seems to help people. Real cultural education, genuine compatibility assessments, honest relationship coaching. It's less profitable but more sustainable. And somehow working together to clean up the mess she made has brought us closer than we ever were when I thought our relationship was perfect. I still don't trust easily, and she still struggles with the manipulative habits that made her successful in business. But we're both trying to become people who deserve the love we're trying to build. Some days that feels like enough. Other days it feels impossible. But it's real now, in a way it never was before. And that has to count for something. If you're a Western man thinking about finding love in Southeast Asia, here's what I wish someone had told me. The line between authentic connection and sophisticated manipulation is thinner than you think. The women who are best at making you feel special often have the most practice at making men feel special. That doesn't mean the feelings aren't real, but it does mean you need to be more careful about understanding the context. Look for financial independence, real jobs, separate income, reluctance to accept large gifts or investments. Be suspicious of anyone who seems too interested in your psychological profile, your relationship history, your emotional vulnerabilities. Ask hard questions about their past relationships, their business, their family situation. Most importantly, trust the feeling that something is too good to be true because it probably is. At the same time, don't let paranoia destroy something genuine. The irony is that my relationship with Cull is more honest now than most traditional relationships I know. We've seen each other at our worst, me as the naive Mark, her as the sophisticated manipulator, and chosen to stay anyway. We know exactly how capable we both are of selfishness and deception, which makes our current commitment to honesty feel more valuable, not less. Would I do it again knowing what I know now? I honestly don't know. The man who got on that plane to Bangkok 5 years ago needed to believe in the possibility of a fresh start, a second chance at love, a life different from the one that had disappointed him in Sydney. The manipulation worked because I wanted it to work. I wanted to be the kind of man who could win the heart of a beautiful, intelligent woman in an exotic location. I wanted the story more than I wanted the truth. Maybe that's the real lesson here. Be careful what stories you tell yourself about why you deserve happiness, because there are people who make their living turning those stories into profitable fantasies. We're still married, still living in Bangkok, still figuring out how to build trust on the ruins of deception. Cool's business has transformed into something I can be proud of: cultural matchmaking, relationship coaching, technology designed to help rather than exploit. We even work together now, which feels strange but right. My telecommunications background helps with the technical side, and my experience as the target of emotional manipulation helps with developing ethical safeguards. It's weird to say, but being manipulated taught me things about human psychology, about the mechanics of attraction and emotional dependency that I never would have learned otherwise. We use those insights now to help other couples navigate the cultural and emotional complexities of cross-cultural relationships in Southeast Asia. Some days I feel like a fraud, the victim teaching other people how not to become victims. Other days I feel like I have unique qualifications to help people avoid the mistakes I made, while still finding genuine connection. The truth is, I'm happier now than I was when I thought our relationship was perfect. Knowing the worst about each other creates a different kind of intimacy. There's no pretense anymore, no performance, no script to follow. We argue about real things, support each other through genuine problems, make decisions based on actual compatibility rather than manufactured attraction. Would I recommend this path to other men? Absolutely not. The pain of discovery, the months of doubt, the complete reconstruction of your understanding of your own life, it's brutal. But if you do find yourself in a similar situation, here's what I learned. Love can be both calculated and genuine. Relationships can be both manipulated and real. And sometimes the most honest thing you can do is admit that you got exactly what you were looking for, even if you found it in the worst possible way. Kul and I are planning a trip back to Sydney next year. I want to introduce her to my kids, show her where I came from, let her see the life I left behind. She's nervous about it, worried that my family will see her as the Thai woman who trapped their father. But I think they'll see what I see now. Someone who started as a professional manipulator, but became a genuine partner. Someone who used her skills to exploit loneliness, but now uses them to build connection. It's a strange story, but it's our story, and after everything we've been through, that feels like enough.